Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. Uh, Welcome to this session on security. Perhaps as we celebrate Bangladesh's 50th year, this is a high time that we rethink and, of course, revisit what we have achieved over the past 5 decades in terms of security. And when we talk about security, we don't necessarily mean the security in terms of hard security or perhaps softer side of the security, but we would like to also explore the security in a greater term and greater spectrum, which includes the traditional as well as the non-traditional security that has been reshaping Bangladesh's economy, growth, and overall societal achievements. In that matter, to discuss this particular issue, we have distinguished speakers today with us, Brigadier General Sakhawat Hussain, who has served as a former election commissioner to the government of Bangladesh. He will be speaking on the issues linking the rule of law, linking the security architecture, and perhaps overall security that we understand in conventional sense. We are delighted that the former health minister and currently a member of parliament, Dr. A.F.M. Rahul Haq, is present here, and he has kindly graced this event, and he will be speaking on a very sensitive issue, or perhaps an issue which is related to our day-to-day life, essentially what we call health security. And he has an immense expertise and is considered as one of the pioneers in bringing health security into the mainstream discourse of security in this country. We have the honor of the presence of Dr. Saira Khan, who is an eminent international security expert. She will be joining us from Canada via Zoom. She has an extensive teaching career in international relations with focuses on the contemporary security affairs that is shaping our foreign policy, our security approach, and perhaps our day-to-day or the state-to-state relationship through the prisms of foreign policy and security. We have the pleasure of having Advocate Said Rezwana Hassan. She will be discussing on the environmental security. She has an eminent expertise in environmental activism, environmental law, and she has been an instrumental in Bangladesh's overall current environmental security discourse. Hence, she will be speaking about our achievements, our needs, our gaps, and the future in terms of environmental sustainability and security. And last but not least, we have the pleasure of having Mr. Pervez Karim Abbasi. He is an economist by training, but a geoeconomist by in terms of expertise. Hence, Mr. Abbasi will be looking into the geoeconomic conditionalities and determinants that essentially shapes our security and understanding of foreign policy in the contemporary world. He is currently teaching as an assistant professor in economics in East West University. With that background, may I request Brigadier General Sakhawat Hussain to speak to this esteemed audience and the audience who are virtually present with us in this very moment. Over to you, Brigadier Hussain.
Thank you so much. I haven't heard exactly what Professor Shah has been telling, but if I'm not wrong, I'm supposed to give kind of a rundown, a scenario of the security situation of Bangladesh for the last 50 years and how it came about. I'm sure most of you have been knowing, but I'm not going to go in detailed deliberation of each point. No, there are other discussions. Definitely they will pick up if there is any query or anything they need me to explain and expand. Let's look back and see the post-liberation scenario. So it's 16 December 1971 that Bangladesh came through a bloody war for 9 months. And with remembering that, and I do remember the martyrs and my respect to them, but killed themselves, called Shaheed, for the liberation of the country. And also, let me also pay homage to the late father of the nation, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, whose 100-year centenary we are celebrating now, and of course the 50 years of Bangladesh. As I was saying, that in 1971 we got liberated ourselves from Pakistani yoke, and Bangladesh was established on the 16th December. Gentlemen, I'm sure you all of are aware of the world history. There are very few countries in the world which got independence or liberated themselves through a civil war or a war of independence like this. Therefore, as it happens, if you read the history of these countries, the countries remain unstable for a long, long time. But I would say Bangladesh has been lucky that it did not remain unstable for a decade or more. But then it remained unstable right after the liberation. And there were a couple of reasons, and it really remained really unstable. Those of us who have not seen those days, it will be very difficult for them to fathom or going through the history books if they are recorded properly. The Bangladesh immediately faced, soon after the liberation, and particularly with the return of Bangabandhu and formation of the government faced multifarious security situation within that particular small time. First, it was the threat or the internal threat. There was no external threat as per se, but the internal threat of the leftist, extremist, which were operating in the northern part of the Bengal. Seemingly, they were connected with the Naxalite movement in the West Bengal, almost in the similar area. And they were the Purva Bangla Sarbohara party. If those of you have forgotten, let me remind you, Purva Bangla Sarbohara party, and the other was Purva Banglar Communist Party. And these were two underground parties which challenged the nascent country's interior or internal security. There was hardly any force to meet this challenge. But then in 1972, the government decided to raise a force known as Rakhi Bahini to tackle this kind of a problem. But the Rakhi Bahini, unfortunately, was not a regular force. It was a militia, mostly made of those young freedom fighters, but they were not under any of the ministry, that they were straightaway under the office of then the Prime Minister. Then there was the armed forces, which was just afresh, a ragtag, new, came out of Liberation War, where, as per Moritz Janowitz, it was a revolutionary army, you can say. So the armed forces of Bangladesh was unlike India and Pakistan. It was revolutionary force because they participated, initiated, led the liberation war. And they were not properly organized. They were under strength. So under all these circumstances, it's about 3, 4, 5 years that the Mujib government had to tackle with these leftist forces, and country was torn, in a sense, into a kind of a civil strife, and of course, the after-war communication and after-war aftermath. It took a real force to tackle with them, but it was difficult because these were small band guerrillas. So Rakhi Bahini and the army combined. Again, the police was also not that organized. So combined had to carry out a massive operation, particularly in northern part of the Bengal, Bangladesh. And this definitely led to a lot of other political issues. And in that, one of the party, which was newly formed in Bangladesh, that was Jatiyo Samajtantrik Dal, which is known as JSD, you still hear about them. They, in fact, started arming themselves, saying that the revolution is not finished yet. So is the Communist parties. So we were in that kind of a situation, and it was definitely a big challenge for any government just after a country which started from nothing but with all the communication disrupted. And the leader of Shiraz Sheikh is known as Shiraz Sheikh. Ultimately, he was killed, he was caught, and the underground party started, I would say, waning down. Then came the new issue. The issue was the Bangladesh armed forces and the Rakhi Bahini, tension between these two. And then, of course, the Bangladesh armed forces were deployed to recover weapons which was not surrendered. These weapons were in thousands with the various people, and social situation was very bad. Mugging, there were all kinds of things, smuggling. 1974 resulted into a famine unprecedented in Bengal. So through all these things, 1975 happened, and you know, a couple of junior officers who were thrown out of the army for various reasons. They went and struck, and entire family of Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman was killed. And then we came to the era of martial law, that is the military rule. And more or less, the country was, more or less, I would say, was little normal and otherwise. But then it was abnormal. It was unsettled again because of the inner fight in the army itself. So we saw the we saw the counter coup on 3rd of November, and then there was a counter coup on 7th of November, which was some kind, I would say, led by the armed forces or armed wing of JSD, along with their organization, secret organization within the army. And that made the whole country unstable again. However, the emergence of Zia, and he tried to stabilize the country and took much effort to stabilize from the internal security, as far as security is concerned. But then there were problems within the armed forces. There were leadership problems within the armed forces. There was a tussle or jostle of the leadership within the armed forces. And in 1981, we saw the tragic death of the President Zia. Again, the army became unsettled. And on 7th November, it was not only army which became unsettled, It was almost outside civilian life was also unsettled. However, after 81, events everybody knows, it became all right. But then, of course, one has not, would not forget or do not delink the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan, and that gave a rise to the Islamic Jihad. Forces from all over the Islamic world, including Bangladesh, had joined under the leadership of Abdullah Azam first, and then the Al-Qaeda chief Osama bin Laden. And when they came back, that became another period of security threat to Bangladesh. When they came back, they formed their own secret organizations. We saw in 2005 the rise of JMB and Jamaat-e-Mujahideen of Bangladesh, and they bombed 63 districts simultaneously. This was a coordinated attack which perhaps Bangladesh was not prepared, and nobody had taken it into account earlier that this one force which is rising, so-called Islamic Jihad, and these are the out of the remnants of Afghan war. Bangladesh internal security became under threat
2 more minutes.
from the Islamic part of it. You want to say anything, Shahab?
2 more minutes, sir.
2 more minutes? I can finish in 1 minute. However, we then saw the rise of IS because of the US invasion of Iraq, and we initially thought that we were out of it, but we found that slowly and gradually our young people have joined them. They took their ideology. There were a lot of secret killing in Bangladesh in the name of extreme Islam, and then we saw the extreme of it was seen in incidents of that holy artisan, where 5 recognized IS operative operated and killed as much as people, and most of them are foreigners, including Italians and the Japanese. And that became another issue of instability. The government was not prepared at that time to tackle such forces, but slowly and gradually the police and the special forces became more strengthened, and somehow still, I would say not adequately, but they have tackled this by force. But still the social problem still remains. We still find their formations from here and there, though their activity has been limited to. But then Bangladesh still remains under threat. And then the new issue is Rohingya issue, which is making a different kind of a security problem for Bangladesh, which could be the regional security problem and international security problem in future. The sign and symptoms is already seen. I would end here. Bangladesh, through these 50 years, I would say had made itself more stable than we could think of. A country where it became totally hopeless in 1974-75. Today it has become one of the model of the world to see, and it's because the resilience of the common people of Bangladesh and young people like Shahab. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, General Hussain. It was extremely fruitful. You have highlighted the uncertainty and the formation of armed forces, and certainly you have highlighted the issues linking ideological extremism. And of course, there was response issues which Bangladesh has dealt with extremely well. And perhaps you have rightly mentioned that the country is a role model of resilience, and hence the success of the police, success of the law enforcement agencies are now quite visible. And of course, the issues of extremism is not only linked with the transnational origin, but there are also elements of homegrown. But again, we have done extremely well over the past 5 decades. So thank you very much for your valuable contribution to this esteemed audience. Now, may I request Dr. AFM Ruhul Haq, Member of Parliament, to kindly discuss and address the audience on Bangladesh's health security and perhaps Bangladesh's achievements in the health sector over the past 5 decades. Sure, sure, sir.
Thank you very much, everyone. Hello. Can you hear me? Thank you very much for asking me to discuss the health situation. I am a doctor and a politician, so I don't know which one to attract and which one to attack. Let me say something about being a physician. I became a physician, I became a doctor when it was Pakistan, and I started practicing when Bangladesh was born, so I'm in both sides. In the last 50 years, the health service of Bangladesh has developed a lot. In the beginning, we were in trouble, definitely. Just let me say, immediately after the freedom fight, we only had one qualified orthopedic surgeon in the country. And now we are 2,000 plus orthopedic surgeons. So that shows where we have come. Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, father of the nation, who looked at everything, not only in the agriculture, the health and education and whatnot, to the extent that when he came to know that the trauma surgeons are needed and we had only few in the country, he immediately looked into it and sent quite a number of them abroad in the East European countries, Germany, East Germany and Russia and many other places, to be trained to come back. And these are general surgeons. They were trained and come back and became orthopedic surgeons to treat the trauma victims of the war. His vision, as many of us would know, that the development of the health service in the rural sector, in the periphery, in the poor people who are living in the periphery. And that's how we started the rural health centers, what is now in the Upazila Health Complex, now 50-bed hospital. It started as a 10-bed hospital. His vision was also to start the health services right into the village, and that has supposed to be, he kept a note. Luckily, when I became the health minister from 2009 to 2014, Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina gave me the or instructed me to revitalize the community clinics. She started the community clinics in 1996, but unfortunately the government afterwards discontinued, and it was my turn to reactivate and to restart many of them. Community clinic, Judith might know that this is every 6,000 people we have got a small two-room service in the village with no doctors, no nurses, but paramedics. This was a very challenging issue. The community clinics that was started in 1996 was abandoned and closed down. The rooms were vandalized. So we restarted and built about 13,000 14,000 community clinics, and now they have become the very most functional part of the health service. I will say functional. With the statistics, we know 10 to 20, 10 to 15 million mothers and child and young people in the village take services of them. There are about 32 medicines that is delivered free of cost, and it is right in the village, managed by a committee, and it's managed by the village not only, I mean, paramedics. We have Bangabandhu's health service, which was in the Upazila of sub-district, which was in that time it was 10 bed. Later on it became a 30 bed. Now it's a 50 bed hospital in the sub-district with the operation theatre facility. And in between, in the unions, what we call this cluster of villages, what we call union, we have got union sub-centers. So we have got community clinic, union sub-centers, and the sub-district or Upazila hospital, and then the district hospitals. The district hospitals at one time was 50 bed, then into 100 bed, then now it is mostly 250 bed district hospitals. And above that we have got medical schools and the hospitals, and above that we have got a specialty hospitals, meaning the cardiac hospital, the cardiac institute, eye institute, orthopedic institute, ENT institute, etc., burn institute, latest Sekachina burn institute, and the neurosurgical centers, etc. So we have got a wonderful infrastructure from the Dhaka, from the best institutes where we can do kidney transplant, coronary bypass, to the village where the for simple headaches and diabetes people can get free treatment. And as you know, this is a free treatment facility for all. I would say this is a wonderful system that we have been able to develop since the connections. Unfortunately, the level of management that is needed to cater this whole machinery is not functioning as we would like. And we need, I believe, that we need some changes in this management, for which I have been advocating, and there are many doctors and physicians and politicians also advocating some change in the management in the big hospitals, in the district hospitals, and in these sub-centers also. So if we could make this a hospital system, or what we call curative system, so far I have been described the curative system or health system based on the hospitals, can make it functional, then it would be a wonderful system. No doubt, we all would know that there are preventive systems, there are education involved in the health system, which is medical schools, undergraduate and postgraduate, and the management of this preventive health is the most important issue at the present age. We all would know that the COVID situation has one micro virus has stumbled the whole world. And it is not only Bangladesh, it is the best and developed countries like UK, USA, France, and who not, is in trouble. Not only we did not understand how it is coming and what it is coming and what to be done, none of the people or none of the doctors or the managers in the world understood what it is going to be. We thought we were, or as a whole, we thought we were beginning to control as the vaccine is coming into play. But as we know now, this is probably not the issue. The issue probably for which we will need to scratch a lot of our heads and we to find out the solutions. So preventive health is a very important issue around the whole world, which is many places being neglected, not only in Bangladesh, but also in developed countries, and now we know the problems. The health education, as we say, health needs to be rearranged and rethought of. The disease pattern has completely changed. The infective situations of polio and TB and meningitis and many things have gone away, but we have got blood pressure and cancer and heart disease and diabetes and completely new era and new things that have come to, not only in Bangladesh but around the whole world. And this needs a new, as we just are saying, preventive health and health education in the society, and we need to look into it much more carefully, otherwise we all are going to be in trouble. So this changes in management in the health, not only in the village service, also in the senior or management, in the management or curative health needs also a very serious issue and serious look into the problems that we can do. Of all these, I would say, as I said, the Bangladesh has come a long way, and from almost zero health service in the beginning in 1971 to we have got 31 medical schools in the government sector. In the private sector, we have got too many, much more than I would like. And in the private health is entirely another arm of the health service. Unfortunately, the private health service, or fortunately, whatever you call, nearly 60 to 70% of the health service being delivered by the private health service system. Unfortunately, the out-of-pocket expenditure also remains very high, and this needs to be controlled. The family planning and the birth control situation needs to be looked into, which has been neglected for a long time. So the issues are many, and many things that need to be
Sir, I have 1 more minute for you, for the sake of the
Thank you.
other speaker, sir.
Okay, no, I understand. So I would say Bangabandhu looked into the health situation from the village to the topmost. Bangabandhu's daughter, Honorable Prime Minister, is very serious concern about the health problems in Bangladesh. I have been lucky to manage her health service for some time, and I would say that we had some trouble in managing the COVID in the beginning, but we have overcome the situation. As Honorable Prime Minister is looking into it all the time and taking care. So Bangladesh health service, I would say we have got doctors that can deliver services. I would say that the structures to deliver services are in there. I believe that if we could reorganize and manage the situations a little better, Bangladesh is in a very good way, in a very good situation, that the health service, both curative, preventive, education, and many other ways, are in a position to deliver the health service and improve. And I believe it will come. I believe that we know, and we are thinking, many of us, including Honorable Prime Minister, is thinking how to improve the situation of the management. And hopefully it will come in future. With this, I will say thank you very much. Jai Bangla, Jai Bangabandhu, Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much, sir. That was quite an elaborative and illustrious journey of Bangladesh since 1971, when Father of the Nation realized that vision of reaching to the remotest and the most marginalized people and ensure health security for them. And today, if you look at Bangladesh's indicators, we now have 72.5 year life expectancy, which is higher than many of our neighboring countries. And even if you look at the newborn who born in Bangladesh's territory is likely to see 5th birthday in larger number than many of our neighboring countries. So henceforth the vision that Bangabandhu dreamt of has essentially kicked off, and today we are now seeing the fruits. Of course, Dr. Hawk has mentioned the gaps in terms of management, of course out of pocket expenditure, and definitely there is a need for greater health education, which he has highlighted, and perhaps these are the things we are going to see in due course of time over the years to come. Now may I request Dr. Khan, Saira Khan, to speak international security and Bangladesh and how Bangladesh has done over the past 5 decades since its birth in 1971. Dr. Khan, to you.
Thank you, Professor Shahab Anam Khan, for giving me the floor. It's an honor to be able to speak today on this auspicious occasion, the 50 years of Bangladesh. I've decided to actually write a few points down because in the interest of time, and also because this is 4:30, I think, a.m. for me, and I could easily be defocused. Good afternoon to all of you, but before I start, I would actually like to pay my respect to the father of the nation, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, and start the few things that I have to say. Interestingly, I always like to talk about theoretical issues, but this is totally different for me, and I've decided to prepare some points based on some normative aspects. In other words, what the government should do, what it has done in the past, and what it should do in the future. So it's really a normative kind of work at this point for me. In the past 50 years, we've seen regime changes, different shades of democracy, governance-related problems, domestic turbulences, corruption, as well as internal security problems. There are questions of good governance, what it means, the connection between governance and development, but obviously there's no absolute theory that can say which one comes first, governance or development. So, but then again, one has to strike up a balance between the two, and we cannot, as a government, focus on one and ignore the other. Bangladesh has come a long way with regard to development. It gives us great pleasure to hear that the other least developed countries need to follow in the footsteps of Bangladesh. In other words, it has set an example for others to follow. Just some decades ago, Bangladesh was called an international basket case. Today, it has attained impressive economic growth. It's exemplary, to say the least. Now, this creates a platform to understand the salience of security challenges that the country is faced with today. There is a strong connection between the international security environment and the sustainability of the internal development. In this case, obviously, I'm also referring to the economic growth that I just mentioned. Before moving on to that, I think it's important to highlight the basic differences between non-traditional security issues and the security issues, which is basically hardcore military politics, military security, and the other non-traditional security issues would basically mean human security, drug trafficking, food security, environmental security, and so on and so forth. For the past year, the world has also faced another non-traditional security, issue, which is the COVID-19, an invisible enemy, human security threat from an invisible enemy. Bangladesh has done well, as the previous speakers have said, well in addressing the issue, also pertaining to securing the vaccines and the rollout. As for the security challenges for Bangladesh, one needs to understand that Bangladesh does not have a conflict with any other country in the region or in the extra-regional sphere. By conflict, I mean a hostile interaction between two or more states, of course, over some contending issues, over which a war is likely to happen. And since wars won't happen, why worry about international security? That's the million-dollar question. When Bangladesh was born, it was the height of the Cold War. The bipolar international system compelled states to side with one or the other pole, meaning, you take sides, either be with the US and be with the capitalist world, or be with the communist world, the Soviet Union. China supported Pakistan, as we all know, and so did the US, in the end, of course, and India helped Bangladesh in its liberation war. Again, we all know that, and thus the country sided with India and, as an extension, with the Soviet Union. Bangladesh was absolutely a victim of the bipolar structure of world politics at the time, I would argue. It was strategic to focus on the development of the country from infrastructure to economy to internal and human security issues. It had no choice. Concepts such as balance of power, bandwagoning, deterrence, or even alliance formation were not important to the security structure of the country. Soft power also had to be cultivated. It was a baby country. It needed funds and recognition from the regional states and the extra-regional powers, including the great powers of the world. The political parties often seem to lean towards either India or the Islamic world, like a pendulum. But I guess that was also necessary at the time. The country was in the infancy of its development. But that period is over. The world today is unipolar, with the US sitting at the top of the power polarity configuration. China is the new economic power. US and China are the contending powers. And it's very likely that the world will be faced with a new Cold War, one that will be between China and the US. To top it off, India and China have a bilateral protracted conflict, who are not only contending over territorial issues, but over influence as well. Who's going to influence which country? How? Under what circumstances? What processes to undertake? What policies to pursue are the things that are on the table for them. And Bangladesh is in the middle of these conflicts, one between India and China, the other about the emerging new Cold War. Today, the country is in a much better position, fortunately. It has consolidated its position in the South Asian region, and it has a stable economy. But its continued growth is heavily dependent on its foreign and security relations between both India and China. It needs China as much as it needs India, and maintaining a strategic balance between the two is extremely important. Bangladesh has developed a cozy relationship with China in the last couple of years, although the Rohingya issue certainly still remains unresolved. China is Bangladesh's largest trading partner, as we all know by now. The annual bilateral trade is valued at approximately $15 billion. Trade with India is slightly more than a third of that amount. China is also the biggest potential investor in Bangladesh. And interestingly, even in the military realm, the military cooperation actually has been witnessed steadily, and it actually increased steadily in the past few years. China is giving Bangladesh massive foreign direct investment in infrastructure and manufacturing, and Bangladesh, of course, is a member of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Now, what is China doing? It's using its soft power resources to influence countries to join its club. It wants others to want what it wants, but it doesn't want others to understand that it wants them to want what it wants. This is coercive behavioral power. It wants you to do something that it wants, but it doesn't want you to understand that it's actually making you do something that it wants. The US has always used it since the end of the Cold War, because the Cold War situation was absolutely different. Soft power was, probably on the table, not as much as it was after the end of the Cold War. Now, Bangladesh needs to play its China card well for its internal security and stability. So, if you're looking at the non-traditional security, and of course in the domestic realm, let's say food security, growth, infrastructural development, and so on and so forth, they're heavily connected to the kind of relationship Bangladesh would maintain in the future with China, and I'm coming to India as well. So China's diplomatic checkbook is extremely important for Bangladesh. Again, for sustainability of the economic growth that it has achieved, in the past few decades. On the India-Bangladesh front, Bangladesh needs India. It goes without saying, for past, present, and the geopolitical realities. While the relationship soured in the past, as we all know, in the past 2 years, to be precise, for the National Register of Citizens and the Citizenship Amendment Act, India is now in the process of revamping this relationship with Bangladesh. Now, if there is a war between India and China, Bangladesh will be faced with a difficult situation. Had it been in the 70s, it would have been totally different.
I have 2 minutes for you. Sorry for that.
The country wouldn't worry about China if it leaned towards India. Today's case is entirely different. The stakes are high, strategic prudence is required. Taking sides with regard to foreign and security relations would mean jeopardizing the internal security interests, such as economic, infrastructure, and human security, like I just said. Taking sides and favoring China would also mean that Bangladesh would jeopardize its relations with the US, the only superpower sitting at the top of the hierarchy of the world. Bangladesh needs to be strategic in its dealings with all three countries, interestingly, simultaneously. Now, there are I'll just quickly wrap up. There are two other security issues which are probably not only important, more important at this moment, would be cybersecurity and terrorism. I think one of the speakers have already discussed terrorism. Cybersecurity is important at this point. In a world where there is proliferation of information and communication technology worldwide, cybersecurity is a salient threat to confidential data and systems. The United States itself is a victim of this crime. Bangladesh is under risk of cyber crimes, which has the potential of challenging the national security of the country. And the crimes are generally connected through phishing, hacking, and stealing data. Now, what do we need to do? We need to develop cybersecurity culture. How do you develop a culture? You need to educate people. How do you educate people? You need to tell people that it's an emerging threat. It was there, but it was just under the carpet for a very long time. Now it's a threat that's absolutely there, and it actually destroys the national security interests of a country. It jeopardizes the interest. It can happen in the private sector as well as in the governmental realm. So we need to be careful about it. We need to have structure legal frameworks, and we need to invest more. When we say we, of course, the government needs to invest more in this realm. As for terrorism, we all know what happened in the Holy Artisan episode in 2016. Of course, the government is fully aware of it. It is on a downswing right now in the international sphere and in the domestic realm as well. But at the end of the day, we need to address that, and we want to make sure that we understand that the eyes of India and China, India and the US are both on us to make sure that we don't give a safe haven to the terrorists. Thank you for giving me a patient hearing. I absolutely tried my best to do it within time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khan. That was intellectually stimulating. If I summarize, perhaps what you have spoken about is Bangladesh's role in international system at the moment. If I see it through the prism of Alexei Johnson's basket case, today we are the centerpiece of Indo-Pacific strategy led by the United States. This is where we are now. So we are calibrating between Washington and Beijing to global powers, and henceforth Bangladesh is now in the center stage, one of the center stage in international politics and international security. And perhaps this is one of our greatest achievement over the past 5 decades. Thank you, Dr. Khan, for your extensive discussion. May I now request Advocate Hassan, Rizwana Hassan, for her stimulating discussion on environmental security, and you have exactly 10 minutes. Okay. I will give you a warning in the 8th minute.
Thank you. I'm a lawyer. You don't have to give me warnings, because the more I talk, the more you'll have to pay me. So I'll keep a check on my time.
I hope Zildur Rahman has taken a note of that.
Hopefully,
Thank
yes.
you.
See, the environmental security issues in Bangladesh originate not only from the country itself. We do have environmental issues, environmental crises that are results of international activities, for example, climate change. Now, if climate change happens the way it is being feared, it is being predicted, then 1/3 of Bangladesh will go underwater. That means that the map of Bangladesh that we got in 1971 will be forced to be changed. The coastal districts will all be gone. So the next generation will be drawing the map of Bangladesh very differently than how we draw it. And this means that one of the most populated countries of the world will have to relocate 1/3 of its population to the remaining 2/3 landmass, which is already overcrowded. So this is a huge security issue because people who will be losing their land to the sea will have to be moving somewhere. And the host community will always not be very welcoming because their realities are also very hard. So this population may very well try to leave the country and go elsewhere, and that may lead to tension at the regional level. We do have water sharing issues with our neighboring countries, China and India, and on this count, we are not in a very advantageous position because we are the lower riparian country. And India and China and Nepal being upper riparian countries and having more economic powers than Bangladesh do not always take into consideration the legitimate interests of Bangladesh. So they, as upper riparian countries, try to control the flow of the waters in a way that suit their economic agenda. And the United Nations Convention on this particular issue, sharing of and management of international waters, haven't been ratified by any of these countries. India hasn't signed it, and China has in fact opposed to this convention. So we have serious issues there. Within our national policy implementation, we see that we are going for a very GDP-centric development model, which is extremely exploitative, I would say non-inclusive and non-transparent. The agency that's responsible for management of agricultural land has already said that if the current model of development continues in Bangladesh, by 2050, Bangladesh will not be left with any more agricultural land. Now that is a serious problem. While we have actually been credited for growing our staple, having such little availability of agricultural land, now hearing this that by 2050 you will lose your agricultural land is a definite threat. Deforestation rate is one of the highest in the world. We have one of the most most polluted rivers of the world in Bangladesh. In Environmental Performance Index, our rank was 179 out of 180 countries in 2018, 179 out of 180 countries in 2019. For some reason, because they have a weird checklist that does not necessarily reflect the national reality all the time. So in 2020, we have ranked 164 out of 180 countries, which is a rank that is not very encouraging. We have one of the most unlivable capitals of the world. Dhaka once became the most unlivable capital of the world. Now we are 7th or 8th, something like that, which also is not very encouraging. And yesterday's newspaper told us that our air that we are breathing every second, is the most polluted in the world. So I'm sorry, I do not have much good news to share with you, but that's the reality in which I operate. However, Bangladesh, as I said, has shown the ability of growing its own staple. It has the largest mangrove of the world, the existence of which is being threatened with projects like Rampal coal-based power plant. We have the longest unbroken sea beach of the world, which is also under severe threat due to climate change. Our sweetwater fishery is the second largest in the world. Mache bhata Bangali jetake bole, but that also is being threatened because if climate changes and the sea level goes up, then the sea water would be intruding into the freshwater bodies, and the second largest sweetwater fishery will actually be damaged. However, this nation is a very complacent nature. We have over the years, because of the governance, because of the politics that has been dictating us, have learned to say, yeah, we are keeping well despite all adversities. So a person who had a road accident, if a relative goes to visit him and he has a broken hand, if the relative asks him, how are you doing? He would say, I'm doing well. That's a good news for the politicians. They have trained us to be complacent and not to complain. And I would actually be talking about some of the environmental challenges, which also has got something to do with our democratic pattern and governance. I don't think our model of democracy is very respectful. I think in the fast pace of development, we are actually contaminating, polluting, degrading, and losing most of our natural resource spaces, which is actually making it difficult for us to go for nature-based solution on the face of the climate change realities. We are increasingly relying on fossil fuel, but the call of the day is to switch to renewable and not to go for fossil fuel. Fortunately, for some reason, the government has said that it is going to postpone 18 proposed coal-based power plants. I do not know what the reason behind the decision was, because when they decided that they'll go for 24 coal-based power plants, they never talked to any of us. When they say they're not going to go for 24, that reason has also not been disclosed. So I think that the present model of development is not respectful to nature. It is extremely exploitative. We are following the model of development that has been followed by countries like EU, US, and China, and their model of development has given rise to a problem like climate change, which has actually brought the existence of the whole globe into some sort of a threat. So that model of development is not proper. When they developed, they did not have the alternatives. So when we are developing, we have the alternatives. When they developed 50 years back, 60 years back, nobody talked about renewable energy. Today, we have the solution of renewable energy. So we should follow the path of sustainability, and we should make our development inclusive. We should make our development equitable, and if it's not inclusive, if it's not equitable, if it is not transparent, it is not going to be sustainable. If you kill out...
Hassan, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'll finish in 1 minute, okay? So, but the two issues on which I would like to draw your attention is, if you, I mean, as a citizen, if I oppose the narrative of the government's development, I don't feel very secured. When we fought against the Pakistani rulers, we fought because we wanted democracy and we wanted to be included in the decision-making process. I don't think 50 years down the road we have a proper model of democracy. We have our unique model of democracy, but that's not allowing people their right to vote and their freedom of speech. I would definitely like to draw your attention to acts like Digital Security Act, which is actually curtailing our freedom of expression. And as an environmental justice advocate, I don't really always feel very safe when I want to oppose or criticize or go very critical about the development narrative that the government is giving. The other thing is the weird form of public-private partnership. We see that the Bangladesh army is signing agreement with a disputed group like Shikdar Group for having a 5-star hotel in the land that is occupied by the indigenous people. First, we do not want that model of development. Bandarbon itself is an eco-sensitive area. You don't need an eco-resort there. You just need to leave it undisturbed. And the thing is, the reason why I'm raising this issue is, you want to rely on your law enforcing agencies when your fundamental rights are violated. And here you see they're coming into partnership that will actually be strengthening a culture of impunity in this country and curtailing citizens' freedom of information. For environmental justice, democracy, freedom of speech, and justice is absolutely crucial. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Advocate Hassan. You have highlighted the necessity of environmental justice, which I believe would require environmental education, will require greater awareness, and of course democratic control over the natural resources and the resources in terms of our climate and environment. Thank you very much for your elaboration. May I now request Mr. Pervez Karim Abbasi, who is a geoeconomist, to present his position and how Bangladesh's geoeconomy evolved over the past 5 decades. Over to you, Mr. Abbasi.
Thank you, Professor Khan. I think I'll be mercifully brief, so I will be going over the points.
You exactly have
10 minutes. Yes.
I will knock you after 8 minutes, and we won't pay you. Thank you.
All right. I hope you knock me verbally. So, okay. Now, thank you. One of the advantages of speaking last is you can tailor-make your speech. So some of my points have already been covered by the previous discussions, so I will be not belaboring my points over there. I'll be focusing on a few points, because geoeconomics in itself is broad. But you might be wondering, what is geoeconomics? I know most of you know this, but it's when a state pursues a wide array of policy objectives, whether it's fiscal policy, monetary policy, trade policy, regional connectivity policies, physical infrastructural investment policies, to acquire geostrategic and foreign policy objectives. That is geoeconomics as a whole. And if you want to see geoeconomics in play, just look at the Marshall Plan of the United States of America, which put them in a dominating stage, or just look at the BRI initiative of China, which has put them as the second contender, or what we say, we have now a duopoly in terms of the leading powers in the world. So when we come to this, so what are the geoeconomic challenges that are facing Bangladesh? And these are some of the longer running challenges that will not go away. Already, again, tension between India and China has been highlighted. Tension between China and USA has been highlighted, and how Bangladesh is caught in the middle. And we have already discussed that, again, we would like to practice that friendship to all, malice to none. But in a changing world full of flux, our foreign policy also changes, and that is also contingent on our economic growth. The stronger our economy grows, the more assertive and more independent our foreign policy options are. And nowadays, we see economic diplomacy coming to the fore. It's no longer about just building relationship. It's no longer about conferences, but it's about trade deals, it's about connectivity deals, it's about basically soft security, it's about people-to-people contact, it's about civil society contact, it's about branding and marketing your cultural resources. Turkey is a very good example. Turkish soap opera, Indian Bollywood industry, even the South Indian industry has made a name for itself. So in this world, how will Bangladesh stand? Again, in order to go forward, we have to look in the past. Exactly in 1757, Bangladesh, or the then Bengal, was a part of a geopolitical and geoeconomic struggle. If you are aware of it, there was a 7 Years' War, whereby you had Great Britain, or Britain and its empire, and the French Empire fighting it out for global domination. And the fight took place even as far as distant Bengal. Sirajuddaula lost his throne in Palasi. It was not only a courtroom intrigue, but it was a manifestation of an international power struggle. So this peril is imminent. What I would advocate, and I'm not the first one and I'll not be the last one, is a strategic or it will be a strategy of equiproximity, geostrategic equiproximity. Well, let's say, what's the difference between equidistance and equiproximity? Equidistance is a negative aspect, where we are passive. Equiproximity is one where we aggressively pursue our interests. And our relationship or our bonhomie with China will not be at the exclusion of India or United States of America. Already there are some challenges. We know that with Joe Biden coming in, Joe Biden is no friend of mine, the way I'm saying Joe Biden, but the idea is, when he has come in, and if you see his pronouncements, if you see the Secretary of State's pronouncements, Sullivan's, all of them, you sense that there will be a weaponization of human rights. There will be a weaponization of environmental compliance. There will be an emphasis of transparency, accountability, and governance. And those will be the weapons that will be targeted largely at China's BRI projects. There is an existential struggle, no matter how sugarcoating is going on. And smaller countries will be torn between. So we have to navigate a strategy. Number two, somehow, of late there's a realization that we need to realize our geostrategic and geopolitical importance. But Myanmar, I would argue, has beaten us to the punch. In North Rakhine, the Sittwe province, that you have the deep sea port, the Kaladan multimodal connectivity project, over here, it has become more important, I would argue, in case of both China and India, whereas Bangladesh was a natural position, far more advantageous position to take greater benefits of this. So Myanmar has beaten to us to a punch. Even now you see in the Western media, there is very limited talk about the genocide that has been carried out of the Rakhines. There's a lot of crocodile tears being shed for restoration of democracy in Myanmar. But a large portion of the population in Myanmar had passively supported this genocidal operation of the Rohingyas. Democracy restoration in Myanmar, fine. But what about Rohingya repatriation? This is one point we need to hammer on. Second issue, Middle East. We forget Middle East. We celebrate our record remittance inflows. But in Middle East, there has been a dynamic change. Oil income is going down. They are shifting towards non-oil income. And more, in many of the states, the local unemployment, the native population, the resident population's unemployment rates are going up. This remittance train, gravy train, it may stop in the future. What then? The Indian and the Pakistani diaspora are in a more advantageous position because greater concentration of skilled labor are going there. How can we basically then, we have been also a large number of low-skilled people over there. But why don't you have more traction on the Middle Eastern policy? This is something that we need to work on for the next decade or 2 decades. Apportioning blame would not do. Number 3, another thing that we would like into is we have an emerging middle-class economy. By all estimates, if things go well, by 2035,
Mr. Abbasi,
we
you
are
have
2 minutes? Okay. By 2035, we are expected to be the 25th largest economy, according to certain estimates. But in order to do so, again, what are the markets are we tapping in? Are we planning to tap into ASEAN market? Are we planning to tap into, again, the Chinese economic sphere, so to speak? Now, these are some of the challenges that I've just highlighted the challenges. How we come up with a way forward to this is, again, only time will tell. But for this, we need to come up with a lot of solutions or policy options or A, B, C, D options that we can go on. I think I'll stop here, and if there are further questions, I can elaborate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abbasi. You have gone as back as 1757, and certainly the Bengal, which is now independent Bangladesh, has been in the center stage of international politics, international security, international economics since then. And perhaps I would further go back. Even if you take the 1st century, 2nd century, you've seen this, the Chinese and the Arabs and the Portuguese started to come and started to do their wealth accumulation from here. And of course, you have rightly mentioned that what kind of policy we have and how it will cater to the needs of the foreign policy of Bangladesh. You have rightly mentioned that the weaponization of human rights, compliance, and so will be formidable issues over the period to come. Thankfully, had you been the friend of Mr. Biden, things would have been better for us. But unfortunately, I will leave it to the audience if they have any question or observation to make to the esteemed panelists. And today, certainly, we have outstanding panelists with us. I open the floor for question and observation. I can't believe this. So, please go ahead.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Preeti Chakraborty, Chairman, Universal Medical College Hospital, and I am in FBCCI, Board of Directors. My question to our ex-health minister is because he has narrated a golden history of our development of healthcare. As all we know that our Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman has dreamt for a society who will not die without food, without health. So he was the part of it. But at the same time, he told regarding private healthcare, and as I'm in private healthcare arena, so all we know that truly 64% of the whole population is taking healthcare from private sector. But we cannot see any instruction or any observation or any information for the development of private healthcare in budget always. So what is your opinion regarding that? Thank you very much. Thank you for giving me permission for my medical college in your tenure. Thank you. It is running well.
Thank you. I think most expected that the health will probably be the first issue to come. I'd love to talk for next couple of hours about the health of all these things that I have not talked about. I have not talked about or I did not touch the private health sector at all because this itself is a big sector, as you know. All of us know that it's about 60 to 75% of the health sector. The health is in the private sector now. And unfortunately, to manage this private health sector, there is very little government regulation. There is hardly a small department, only few people sitting in the disease office. So, if we look into the Bangabandhu Bangladesh, and that time there was only one clinic in Dhanmondi with 10 beds, you see, and those them and that time to now you can see how many thousands of I think it's about 13,000 or something private sector health clinics, the bigger hospitals, the smaller hospitals, medium scale hospitals. So the private sector needs to be looked into very seriously, and I believe the health ministry or the health management system in Bangladesh has to look into it quite separately and has to develop a lot of regulations to manage this. My personal issue with the private sector is this. People who has money would definitely go to the private sector. That's their option. There is nothing wrong in it. But I believe the people who has money should not claim the free health service in the government sector. That is the issue. So there are two conflicting issues that needs to be addressed. I have recently heard from the Honorable Prime Minister and I was very happy that she mentioned the health insurance in Bangladesh. That should come in future. There should be some form of insurance, whatever we say. British health system, I had the opportunity of working in your country for 10 years, so I know reasonably well. It's very difficult to practice in Bangladesh to give free health service to all, and that is what we are based on, so free health service for all. So we need to do some steering of health service. So, but I would say the private sector is doing reasonably well, but needs to be very strongly regulated. There are bigger hospitals reasonably well, but the smaller and very small private sector hospitals are very badly managed. It needs a very big discussion, but I appreciate your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
I just want to ask a question about the ongoing NRC, national in India. They are doing some population survey, Citizens Amendment Act, and these are creating some problem for the minority Muslims. Do you think that there will be an exodus of minority Muslims out of India and they may enter into Bangladesh and create a problem? Is there any possibility? What's your opinion?
Is this question directed to anyone specific?
No, not to anyone specific, to the panel.
Thank you.
Anyone may answer.
Last question. Then after Rizwanov, I'll just add your point.
I have a question.
Oh, you have a question. I mean, that's nice. So I would then certainly give the privilege to Advocate Hassan to ask the question.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I raised the issue of complacency because of the achievements that we have heard about in our health sector. Actually, during the pandemic, we have all experienced different sorts of incidences that were not very sweet. I mean, not getting service in the health sector is one thing, but even the messages that were coming to us during the pandemic weren't at all very reassuring. So when you painted a rather very happy, rosy picture of the health sector, I was being provoked. I understand that we have come a long way, but I think we have a long way to go also.
Your question,
My
please.
question is, when you talk about regulating the private sector, keeping the public sector, how do you say it? I mean, operate the way they are operating now. Will it be possible to regulate the private sector? If the public sector does not set standards, if the public sector is not standardized, if the public sector does not follow rules, if the public health sector is not service-oriented, will the government be successful in regulating the private healthcare people? That is only one question. The other thing is about the health insurance. We certainly would support a proposal for health insurance, but I think it's extremely critical to make sure that the mass people get the benefit of this scheme, and this again does not become something to be regulated by another private sector against which the mass people will have to fight. My third point is about the VIPs not taking treatment in the public.
Rizwanov, I'm going to cut you off.
I'm done.
Done? Was that a question or
That's a
is
question.
correct?
The first, yes.
Thank you. I leave it with the Honorable Former Minister to answer.
Sir,
you have
very,
1 minute.
very, very easy to answer her questions because the first question about the private and the government sector. Unless we improve the private government sector, is there anything to do with the private sector? The answer is no. Definitely no. I have been doing some seminars quite last few weeks to see how we can improve the government sector. If you go to the Upajala Health Complex, let us start there. Let's leave the community clinic because this is a small sector. If we go to from the Upajala Health Complex, if it is not clean, if there is no doctor, if there is no investigation, if you come to the district hospital, the same thing being repeated, the specialists are not there, not the clean hospital and the services are not there, then there is no way we can improve the government health service. And I believe it is the district hospitals and the Upajala hospitals and the sub-centers in the village, if we could connect this, meaning there should be a doctor, it is a clean place, there will be services available, the people with a smiling face giving the services to the patients, and that is what I am talking about the health service, and it is possible. If the Green Life Hospital here or the hospitals she is representing can, even I have a small hospital, can give services to the people by the local people, why the government sector cannot do it? We need to look into that, why and how to improve that. So yes, of course we need to improve the government sector, and I personally believe it is possible by changing the management. So the management by I as a minister, no matter what good minister you are, you cannot know their 400 Upajala health complexes, how they are functioning. It is not possible. So we need to, I believe you need to decentralize the health system management from the center, and once we can do that, I believe it will improve. I forgotten the next two questions.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Advocate Hassan. Thank you, Mr. Abbasi, for being with us. For the sake of time, I would like to give my sincere thanks to all the panelists who were virtual, who were physical over here, for their valuable comments. And I'm quite sure the gathering that we have today in front of us, and even virtually, all of them have largely benefited from this discussion. And we look forward to hearing from all of you in future. And since the organizers has given me repeated warning.